Picture a Saturday morning, sometime around 1962. Your family's television set, the big console one, the one that lives in the living room like a piece of furniture. It makes a sound, a pop, maybe a smell, and then the picture goes dark. Your father unplugs it, tries it again, nothing. So he does what everybody did. He picks up the phone. And within a day or two, a man shows up at your door with a toolbox. He pulls the TV away from the wall, opens the back panel, and starts looking at the guts of it. These rows of glowing glass tubes, circuits, wires. He knows exactly what he is doing. He has seen this 1,000 times. Within an hour, he has fixed it. He hands your father a receipt. You watch the Ed Sullivan Show that Sunday like nothing ever happened. That man was a TV repairman, and that shop he came from, the one on your main street with sets in the window and a hand-painted sign, was one of tens of thousands that once existed all across America. Today, there are almost none left. So what happened? To understand why TV repair shops mattered so much, you have to understand what a television set actually was in the 1950s and 1960s. It was not a flat screen. It was not something you bought at a big box store and replaced every 3 years. A television set in the post-war era was a major purchase, one of the largest your family might make. The average console TV in 1955 cost somewhere between $200 and $400. Adjusted for inflation, that is close to $2,000 to $4,000 today. It was an investment. You chose it carefully. You expected to own it for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. And the technology inside it was complicated in a very specific way. Televisions ran on vacuum tubes, dozens of them, sometimes more. Each tube was a small glass cylinder that controlled the flow of electricity. Together, they made the picture possible: the brightness, the contrast, the sound, the signal. The problem was that vacuum tubes burned out. It was just what they did. They had a lifespan, and when one tube failed, the whole set failed with it. But here's the thing. Those tubes were replaceable. You didn't have to throw away the whole television. You just had to know which tube it failed, find the right replacement, and swap it in. That's a repair. And repair made sense, both economically and practically. The TV repairman was the person who understood all of this. He knew the common failure points on a Zenith versus a Philco versus an RCA. He had the testing equipment to figure out which tube was the problem. He often carried a supply of the most common tubes right in his van. Some repairmen worked out of their own homes. Others ran storefronts. The classic neighborhood TV shop with a workshop in the back, a waiting room up front, and maybe 3 or 4 employees. In a small city, you might have half a dozen of these shops. In a big city, dozens. And they were busy, because in a country where almost every household owned a television by the early 1960s, and those televisions regularly needed attention, there was never a shortage of work. But this was not just a business, it was a neighborhood institution. The TV repairman often knew his customers personally. He came to your house, he saw your living room, your kids watched him work. There was a social side to it that is easy to miss now. It was one of those ordinary service relationships, like the family doctor or the local pharmacist, that made neighborhoods feel connected. And for a lot of young men in the 1940s and 1950s, electronics repair was a real career path. You could learn it through vocational school, through the military, or just through self-teaching. A lot of veterans came back from World War II with electronics training from the Signal Corps. Electronics as a hobby was huge in this era. There were magazines, kits, radio clubs. Fixing TVs was respected technical work. It paid well. It was stable. It was yours. Some of these repairmen became small businessmen with real standing in their communities. They sponsored Little League teams. They advertised on the back of the church bulletin. When your set broke, you didn't just call anyone. You called your guy. The house call was a big part of this. Televisions were large and heavy. You didn't take them in. The repairman came to you. That meant he was a regular presence in American living rooms in a way that is hard to imagine now. There was also the tube testing machine, which deserves its own mention, because it wasn't just in repair shops. Drugstores, hardware stores, and 5 and dime stores often had a tube tester right near the front counter, a little machine mounted on a pedestal.
You could pull your own tubes out of the back of your TV, bring them in, test them yourself, and buy a replacement off the rack. It was a form of do-it-yourself that was completely normal. The idea that an ordinary person might open the back of their television set and poke around inside it would seem strange today. In 1957, it was just something people did. The decline of the TV repair shop didn't happen all at once. It happened in layers. The first shift came in the mid-1960s with the arrival of solid-state televisions. These sets replaced vacuum tubes with transistors, smaller, more reliable, and much harder for the average person to diagnose or replace. You couldn't test a transistor on a machine at the drugstore. The tube tester became obsolete almost overnight. This didn't kill TV repair, but it changed it. The work became more specialized, more equipment-intensive, and slowly more expensive relative to what the repair was actually worth. Then came the second shift, price. Through the 1970s and especially into the 1980s, the cost of making televisions began to fall dramatically. Japanese manufacturers like Sony, Panasonic, and Toshiba were producing sets with high reliability and lower prices. American manufacturers responded by moving production overseas and competing on cost. A new television that once cost the equivalent of a month's wages started costing a week's wages, then just a few days' wages. When a repair bill starts to approach the cost of a new set, the economics of repair fall apart. And there was a third shift, the cultural one. The post-war generation had grown up during the Depression and the war. They repaired things. That was just what you did. You didn't throw away something that could be fixed. But their children, the baby boomers coming of age as consumers in the 1970s and 80s, inherited a different world, a world of abundance, disposability, and constant improvement. A new TV didn't just replace an old one, it was better. Larger screen, remote control, better color. Why fix last year's model when this year's is $200 at Sears? The repair shop became harder to justify from every direction at once. The shops that survived into the 1990s were increasingly working on commercial equipment, large-screen projection televisions, or specialty electronics. Some pivoted to VCR repair, which briefly created a whole new wave of work in the 1980s. Some added appliance repair, microwaves, stereos, washing machines, but the direction was clear. By the time flat-panel LCD televisions became mainstream in the mid-2000s, the economics of repair had become almost entirely impossible. These sets are not designed to be repaired. The screens themselves, if damaged or failing, often cost more to replace than the whole television. The circuit boards are proprietary, the diagnostic tools required are expensive and specialized, and the labor cost of a qualified technician is simply not recoverable given what a new TV costs today. A 50-inch flat screen now costs less in real dollars than a 21-inch console set cost in 1960. The last generation of full-service TV repair shops quietly closed. Some of the men who ran them retired. Some tried to reinvent themselves as computer repair shops, a business with its own uncertain future. Their children mostly went into different fields entirely. The tube testers in the drugstores were thrown away decades ago. The vocational schools stopped teaching television electronics. The trade publications went dark. Here's what stays with me when I think about the TV repairman. He represented something we don't really have a name for anymore. The idea that the things you own are worth maintaining, that they have a life that can be extended with skill and care, that there is a person in your community whose job it is to know how to fix them, and calling that person is the normal, sensible thing to do. We live in a world now where the word repair has almost disappeared from our relationship with technology. When your phone stops working, you don't fix it, you upgrade. When your television goes dark, you don't call anyone, you drive to the store. That's not necessarily a tragedy, but something was lost in that transition. A set of skills, a set of relationships, a set of thinking about the things you own as worth taking care of. The TV repairman didn't just fix televisions. He was part of how neighborhoods worked, part of how people trusted each other with the objects in their homes and the money in their wallets. And when the economics made him impossible to sustain, he just disappeared, quietly, like so many things from that era. No announcement, no farewell. Just an empty storefront on a main street somewhere, and a sign taken down.